Mission fucking accomplished. Goon Swarm is not a threat.
Good luck with your all's dumb nullsec war. Snuffed out number 1. Anunnaki Keepstar is next, and then come on.
There, then you were just going to fucking magically jump into EVE Online in a system, and it was just going to load, and nobody was going to call you fucking stupid later?
There's an Eagle fleet that has dive bombed a Megathron fleet. This is the bravest shit I have ever seen in my life.
The best possible shot to do something to the Imperium, and you fucked it up.
I talked a lot of shit over the last couple months. It's time to fucking eat some. And I showed up here to eat shit. Like,
the reason that this keeps started and get contested, and I cannot make this up, is because of tie-dye.
Guess where goons are going to live after this war is over?
Current plan is 319, I believe, right?
Delph.
Hi, sick.
I can
People
tell you very
overreacting.
clearly, our Diplos didn't even fucking care. Like,
White daddy.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Untethered. Have a large number of guests with us today. We have 3 guests with us today, and I think we'll get to the guests in just a moment when Redline has something for us.
Honestly, you were really just supposed to keep going until I started to do the thing, because, like, I got bad news. It's gonna start now, right? I don't even think it can be heard. It can't be heard.
No, it can't be heard.
How embarrassing.
You just ruined it now.
Let's
What production value?
let's just imagine in that case
Imagine
that we
if you ordered
have
the work
some
4 days ago when the fact
that we have some sad trumpet for one of our guests here today. We have Gradex with us today, who has suffered an incredibly amusing loss in the video game EVE Online.
Oh,
But
thank
aside from Gra, we also have Drakid on with us, who has ruined Pochvan this week. And
I don't understand.
we also have Angry Moustache, who can explain to those of us here who are very stupid exactly some of the useful things that we can glean from the MER. But I think first of all, Gra, you're not the first person to lose a Python in EVE Online, are you?
No, I'm not. There have been 2 others lost before me. Both of them by Mark Bridges, if I remember correctly.
So he's lost 2, but how were his fit compared to yours? Who had the most expensive EP?
Mark's first one was relatively cheaply fit, if I remember correctly. It was just Tech 2 ACs, but otherwise probably top tier abyssals. I don't know the stats for them, but they were pretty good.
In the world of what cheap means when hulls are over 1 trillion ISK, why would you fit Tech 2 guns to one of those rather than getting a full off?
Well, there are a couple of factors. One of the major ones being the availability of certain modules. Some of the modules, especially for the correct Python fittings, correct between parentheses, I guess you would say that. But the autocannons in particular and the artillery are incredibly rare, as they can only be gotten in, I think, one single region, which doesn't a lot, if any, belts at all. So yeah, it's quite problematic. That's also why I only had Hakims.
You didn't seem to. Well, I mean, you say only, but I mean, you didn't seem to have too much trouble being able to get 6 matching. Were they all matching officer guns on that?
Yeah, they were matching, and I took out roughly 70% of the JITA market doing that.
Jeez.
70%. What? So there were more of these already for sale.
There were some more for sale. I got 2 off a private contract, and I had to get 4 off the JITA market. Roughly 9 bill each average. For just very, very hard to get. As you can see from the stream, these are extremely rare to get on kill mills.
Okay, interesting. Now, full disclosure here, Gradex is one of the valued members of my alliance. Watch this, and he did manage to make our overall forever ISK efficiency be in the negative for the entire alliance, just with one ship loss. If you to click on the alliance red line, you'll see the disparity on ISK killed to ISK lost, and that might give you some indication as to just how quick it can be for one single person to destroy an entire alliance for 100 people.
Ruined. Your kill boards suck, dude.
It's
Holy.
ruined. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll all immediately leave the game. And
I don't think you need to do that. Just disband the alliance and then start a new one with a dot at the end.
Right, you didn't like
it never happened.
Not entirely unlike that. Not that we're going to go into this subject, but did you see on Reddit just yesterday, or day before yesterday, that person being like, "Oh, we stole an alliance name from somebody who let it lapse, and then CCP banned it."
Yep.
Gra, how long did it take you to collect all of the modules for that Python? And perhaps more importantly, were they the modules that you ultimately wanted to fit to it, or is that just what you could get at the time?
Actually, not that super long, to be honest. Some SML cloaks were already available. They were kind of pushed up pretty high because of Pythons to begin with, but I still managed to snag some. The RTs, it didn't take that long, to be honest. I got 2 off of the Abyssal Trading Discord, and then 4 more from Jeddah. Just one from Jeddah. The MWD I already had. I bought that on a speculation from a guy at 10 bill. It was way too cheap for that, so I bought it up and ended up with a Python, so I put it on that.
So, Minmatar Fleet Alliance, if you're listening, obviously we know that you've got all of those dropped modules in your alliance.
They don't anymore.
Loot hanger. Has it been sold already?
Some of my guys, Arcady and Iskander, have already bought most of the good modules.
Hold on, are you saying that you have already bought Gra's modules?
Did
you get a good deal? Do you know how much it was?
I think he got a good deal on the guns. Considering my Hakim's guns, I bought 4.75 bill each, which was like a year ago. 9 bill, I think, was an absolute fucking scam, but that's what the nature of inflation is in this game, I guess.
It is what it is.
I don't know what Arcady bought for all of them, but he did buy them.
Now, for those who never use some of this stuff, and I don't just mean the Python. I'm going to go a little bit closer here. Domination Fusion L. Why don't more people use pirate ammunition, Gra?
Good pirate ammo, like the expensive pirate ammo, is fairly rare to get, actually. A lot of this ammo is relatively highly priced for what it is in the end. I know there's some non-AT ships that will use them, like succubuses that are relatively pimp fit will use like DB or True Sancha ammo, stuff like that. But for like the autocannon or the missiles or whatever, like for my Laylaps, the light missiles are insanely expensive. I will go through couple 100 mil in a prolonged engagement. I mean, it's still nothing compared to like the rest of the value of the ship.
Now it's a little bit shameful that I've been playing this game for nearly 18 years and I've never really considered the difference between, because there are 2 types of each pirate ammo, right?
Yeah, there's the lower tier ammo, like the Sancha ammo, which is basically on par with faction ammo. And then there's an extra high tier ammo, which is only gettable from drops, very rare drops. So a lot of times these markets are just going to be relatively empty or gamed to all hell. which makes it not a good value proposition for most ships.
What's the difference between like the normal pirate ammo and the good pirate ammo?
1.6%.
1.6%.
Yeah, roughly.
I mean, if you're spending 1.3 trillion ISK on a ship, is that kind of the only time when it's worth it?
It's also the fact that both mine and Graz, well, was Graz, fit. We use arty, so the higher the damage possible is to secure the one-shot kill, essentially.
Yeah.
So it can hit a lot of breakpoints, like domination ammo for me on phase plasma. I use quite a lot because it hits a certain breakpoint on certain saber fits to one-shot it. And domination EMP, which is probably the most expensive ammo in the game, it's 500,000. So it's currently 551,000 ISK per shot, per round. So a Python firing one is over 3 mil ISK, basically every 4 seconds. That allows you to one-shot battle cruisers from beyond optimal range, which gives quite a bit of safety. So it's not like damage for the sake of it, and for being overly blingy, it does actually serve a purpose.
Now, Drake, you are a fellow Python enjoyer.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to ask you is, how does your fit differ? But obviously, there's absolutely no way that you're going to be wanting to tell us what your fit of your Python is currently. Is that something that Minotaur Fleet is going to have to find out for themselves?
Everybody's already seen my fit.
Well, you want to know something funny?
Yeah.
I actually based my fit exactly off of Drake's.
Now, have you
the secrets
have you
revealed? Holy!
I know, but whose is better, right? Because I mean, you're both using abyssal modules here, so there's going to be some variance. Which one of you has
obviously
better?
Drake has the better one because his isn't dead.
It's
yet.
still alive,
right? Like that's
He's still alive, right?
Yeah,
Dynamite, can you take a guess, like without looking in game or on Jitta Market? It's not even on Jitta Market, but how much the Tobias 1400s would be each?
Tobias 1400s each. I've never even looked at how much officer guns cost. I've seen your ones here, which you say aren't the best ones, right? Let me take a guess. Is a single Tobias 1400? Is it 5 billion ISK?
14.
No.
14?
No.
Per unit?
14.
Not even close.
14
Go on.
now. I bought
Sorry, did you say 40?
Yeah, so when I bought the 5 for the Panther before the Python came out, I paid between 27 and 30 bill for them, just because it took me like a year. It took me 3 years of searching and then an extra year of actually buying, like securing them. And they were around, call it 28 bill each. And then when I had to buy the final one, I could only find one. He was like, I want 40 bill because I know you got a Python. I'm like, right, fuck it, I just want it. And on the Jita market now, I don't know if there's any, but I think one did.
I don't think there's any.
I think one did sell 38 or something, like a few months ago. It's just the nature. Inflation's just a bitch right now, but at this level, like it doesn't. At that point, it doesn't matter.
Well, I got one last thing before we move into the extra inflation that you personally have added to the game, Drake, with your Potron changes that you coded and you put into the game, right? That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what we're doing?
Yeah. So if you get like the CSM, they just
I
give you a
missed that
Python
demo.
application and a license. They're like, oh yeah, go nuts.
What is? I've completely lost my train of thought here. How does Gra's loss? Gra, how does your loss compare to the most expensive losses ever in this game?
Okay, well, that's a good one. So on Zkill, currently the most expensive loss ever, I believe, was achieved when there was a 100% drop event, and is basically just a meme, people killing their own thing and getting full drop from it.
I don't think that really. I don't think that really counts as
Doesn't count,
an honest PvP loss, you know.
But people are going to look it up and they're going to see that and they're going to say like, oh, it's not the most expensive loss. The second most expensive loss is Mark Bridges' second Python, which had the Gotan 800mm guns on them, which are also insanely expensively priced. I don't even know how much he paid for those or how much they're valued currently. But that came in at 1.53 trillion without the abyssals, of course. Nobody knows how much those were worth in total. And mine's parked just below that.
You and Drake kind of know what you paid for your abyssals, and I expect that you endlessly show each other screenshots of your abyssals to each other while perhaps sweating slightly.
I can show them on screen. I'm showing my screen. I can show them, but mine is just shy of 2 trillion-esque, including the ship and fit. If you value the Python at 1.3 trill, I'd say.
So if you were ever to lose it to Minmatar Fleet Alliance like Gra did, because it would be them. Obviously, they're the experts. They've already proven they're the experts at catching and killing these.
It turns out the strat is just to have a malediction and have a Python walk to you at 20.
Yep, it's a good one.
Rest in peace to Gra's Python, who was trying to come and assist his court mates in their hugely expensive vanilla harbingers. We thank you for your sacrifice, Gra.
07.
If you insist.
But Drake, people, I haven't fully comprehended the changes that recently occurred for Potron that CCP put in. But something that people were bandying around a lot is, adding to the inflation. What do they mean by that?
It's a bit weird. So, Potron, as everyone has known, has been very, very high as an inflationary item. It's been as high as 22.7 trillion, I think was the highest it's ever printed. And then the revenue.
Is that yearly?
Around. That was monthly. So 22.7 trill. That was per month. That was their peak, and it was around 19 to 20 trill, like average over and over. And my lights turned off because I opened something over my amazing notepad light. Then Revenant came around, and something that we've wanted for a long time has come, which was like partially based off a lot of the stuff I've been pushing for years, and then partially based on other stuff. And the more intensive things I didn't think we would get were things we did get. So we got a complete recoding and redesign of the site, which used to be only a Mar. You would only ever fight a Mar, so you'd only ever fight the Revelation. You would only ever have newts and TDs and GDs in there to deal with.
Is that damage locked as well?
That was also damage locked, yeah, EM firm.
So which part of this did you ask for?
So I had asked for this as well, but I didn't think I was going to get it. But I also asked for a 15% reduction in the payout, and part of that split out to be red loot, which I'll explain why later. So we had that, and we also had the sites being redone. So now we have Kaldari, Galente, and Minmatar. Galente and Minmatar are pretty brutal because they have so many scrams and webs and TPs. So wrecking shots from the dreads. A lot of Lokis have been dying recently to it, which is good. Fuck Lokis. Everyone uses them. They're boring, but whatever. But the combination of the difficulty going up and the payout going down was the force got reduced a lot more than I expected. And we do want to, hopefully in the future, can't commit to it, but hopefully we can rebalance the smaller sites, which are currently a joke. Like a drone site, which you will range from a few tiny drones, which you can kill in a noob ship, or it'll warp in a super carrier that'll one-shot you. That pays out 8 mil. And then a drifter site, which can spawn drifters that one-shot you, also only pays out 8 mil. It's a bit of a joke. So you want to bring those payouts up, and hopefully if we can redesign the sites as well, but I'm not sure if we're going to get that or not. So some of the faucet reduction was going to go to there. The faucet was reduced way too much, even though that's a good thing, because as Angry will say when we get his presentation, faucets have been out of hand for a long time, and Podgman has played a part in that. So this patch, which we just had, which we were expecting to be polarizing and have a lot of negative feedback because of the nature of it, but it's been a lot more negative than we expected. So the change was, we saw a lot of people were trying to bring small like 20-25 man groups to try Poshvin out. And the moment they came in, they would get collapsed on by anywhere between 80 and 150 accounts, and that's like a mix of marauders, battleships, hacks, and T3Cs. And they would just get collapsed on, they would get shit on, and then they would leave and not come back. And then I also been going around watching people, and the average amount of people inside a site not fighting each other, just running the site, was 42, and on some days the average was like 60. So they were going into this site that's designed for 15 people, which is supposed to have a dread that sieges after, I think it's after 30 seconds now, to actually do some damage, actually be a threat. They were killing it before that, and they were running it too fast. So what we did was we've upped the pay because there was some leeway in the payment. We could bring it up a bit. But on the flip side, we had it so in order to disincentivize this blobbing tactic, we've introduced keys. So to bring 15 people in, it would cost you 450 million in terms of keys. But when you complete the site, not only do you get the increased payout, you also get those keys back. You get 15 keys back. So if you had 25 people and you were running on a 10 key deficit per site, you would have the same effective payout as you were before the patch. The main feedback we had is twofold. One is human fleets are affected far more than multi-boxer fleets here, because multi-boxer fleets are generally a lot richer in their wallets. They can quite easily just buy a load of keys each and just have it automatically come out of their cargo, and then they'll deal with it when they need to restock the keys later. Whereas if you've got lots of people, like actual people in a human fleet, you have the issue of, has everyone got this? You need to track the keys, who's getting the keys. You've got to make sure everyone takes the key from the end of the site. When people are undocking, or if they die, they've got to make sure they got a new key. So there's a lot of overhead for the FC, which we've had two groups have said they really like it. Not because of this overhead, they're just saying they can deal with it, but they do like that it stops people blobbing them. And there's others that say it's far too much overhead for them. It's so much aggro, and at the end of the day, rich people are still going to use the keys to come in and blob them, which I haven't seen yet, but it's early days in the patch.
The keys are a pretty pointless system in my mind because of the complexity that it adds to bringing actual humans into Poshvin. Because you talked about those small groups of 20 to 25 people. Like, I feel like they're even less likely to go in now and try it for the first time. Because of things like this.
We want to watch. Yeah. And also,
because now if there's someone running a site and I want to go in and fight them, I have to pay to do that. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Nowhere else is a thing.
There are other places where there's keys like that. The LowSec has some key sites. It is quite, and then some event sites have that as well.
As a LowSec, I can tell you that you in any given quarter, you might not even see one person running those sites. I mean, obviously they are being run, but you statistically just don't see those sites.
But it is something that we're looking at. If it's we've put the feedback, like we're watching the feedback, we've been documenting it to see where if there's anything we can do a patch to make it easier and keep this system. But if the data down the line reflects the fact this was just a bad patch, then it's not like we're going to stick our head in the sand and say, well, it's in now. We'll look at alternatives. Because
so key sites, I'm never a fan of key sites, largely because I think the ultimate aim should be you want two or more players to encounter each other in space, and hopefully that encounter is going to lead to dead pixels, right? It's trying to promote the number of encounters in space. The moment you stick mechanisms that add restrictions to that encounter happening, and I get the other reasons for doing it, I think that is a blunt instrument that's just not worth it. I think you want to encourage interaction in space.
Yeah, it's also the vast majority of fights weren't inside the site. Every time there was a fight inside the site, it was almost entirely that case of a very small fleet versus a lot of other fleets converging on them. The vast majority of Poshman PvP is on OBS, is either on gates, on stations, or in the first room before the gate. So we were expecting it not to affect that much. But again, the feedback has been extremely negative, so we're going to review that. The other thing...
what kind of feedback did you expect from it?
We were expecting some negative feedback because fundamentally this was going to negatively affect the people that were profiting from the behavior that this was designed to stop. So they were a lot of locals, so we were expecting pushback from that.
Well, it negatively impacts everyone. I mean, to be blunt with it, it negatively impacts everyone. It's just that some people are going to eat it and be fine with it. That's what you were talking about earlier.
I think the idea was generally pretty decent in like trying to reduce the strength of just straight up blobbing somebody.
Yeah.
But what it also does is like reduce people's desire to go into a site that's already being run.
Mm-hmm. We've got some ideas on addressing that. I'm not sure if that's gonna be out in any timely fashion or not, because everything's up in the air at the moment. It's just planning. But on the positive side, the positive feedback we had, what people are doing is if they had, say, 2 lots of 25 people, human fleets, they're doing the 20 to 25 inside, and then the rest of them are staying outside for security. Which even though the people can warp out and come back in, that's a delay on essentially the blob. If that 50 man is a blob, they're now split in half. So suddenly there's a potential for defeating detail and then pushing in. But again, we want to see the data to see what it is, to see how it's going to play out.
I suppose that, there are several elephants in the room here, and one of them is a problem that affects Potchfan, but it also hugely affects faction warfare, and it hugely affects other types of, larger scale PvE, is the sheer ease of multi-boxing these sites as well. Do you think that there's anything that CCP can do to make this stuff, at the very least, not as easy to multi-box, and make it at least equally achievable where every ship is an individual human?
Why would they do that? Why would they ever do anything to disincentivize multi-boxing?
When these sites were changed, when it went from just the Amar to the actual 4 factions, a lot of the multi-boxers were like, "Oh, this is actually some of these are actually hard because their comps suddenly weren't working." And then one of the sites, which is it's the least deadly but the longest to run site, is the Phoenix site because it has lots of ECM. But the Phoenix applies fuck all DPS. As long as you're moving over 100 meters a second, it just doesn't apply. And we've buffed the Phoenix 3 times now, and it still just is worthless. So unless I then put turrets on the Phoenix, it's still going to be worthless. But the difference in sites are harder for multi-boxing. But after a month, it was eventually solved, even with people messing around with different comps. I think no matter what you do, depending on how complex the sites are, they will eventually be multi-box regardless. The more complex the site will take longer for people to multi-box, but it will eventually be solved. So unless you have a dev that can redesign the sites every 3 months, it's inevitable, really.
I'm a strong proponent of the concept of businesses doing well from improving the quality of their product rather than just increasing the amount of it that individual people will buy. This is to you, Redline, as to my reasoning as to why CCP would want to not optimize around multi-boxing. Multi-boxing, if it was solved, or at least partially solved, it would put a huge dent in the things that cause so much of the inflation that we're seeing right now.
What do you mean? Explain that to me. Because as far as I can
Multi-boxing
tell,
people multi-box in PvE as a pathway to multiplying the amount of money they make in the game as a single human being.
uh-huh.
And when multi-boxing is easy, then these people get multiple times richer than people who are single boxing, and that causes inflation in the game, and it largely affects the people who are trying to just play it as a video game rather than a job.
It's a bit of a catch-22 though, because either because I think CCP, no matter what they do, multi-boxing is going to happen. If you make sites dead fucking easy, like say the Ishtar sites that are dead old in nullsec, people will spin up multi-boxing because you can essentially AFK it, and it's almost infinitely scalable as long as you have the accounts, as long as they
And the
run long
computer.
enough. And the computer, you could have multiple computers. You could
But
use
like
GeForce Now or whatever
you
similar.
understand that multi-boxing, increasing inflation, like all of that is good for CCP, right? Because the more things cost, the more Plex people have to buy, the more money
Yes, but
CCP makes. Like that's
there
the whole
comes a
point.
point where normal people who are actually playing the game rather than treating it like a job,
Name 3
start to
normal
not be
people who
able
play
to.
EVE Online.
People who are playing it as a game rather than playing it as a job start to be the ones that start to fall away because there comes a tipping point where the effort is no longer worth it. And I don't just mean for them to be able to afford Plex. There are a number of sane people who play the game as well, who just pay some money to subscribe to the game rather than working to be able to pay for the game so that they can work to pay for the game so they can work to pay for the game.
Well, this was a while back, but I believe when CCP released like their player survey in like 2018 or something, like the average account number was like 2.5, and out for those people, the vast majority paid money for one and then Plex the rest. So, so when Plex rises, how they actually react is they keep their main, which they pay with dollars or pounds on a subscription, and then they reduce their number of Plex accounts.
Sure. I mean, how long ago was that? I mean, I know that people have multi-boxed PvE or industry or market trading or any other number of money-making ventures since the dawn of the game, but I'd be interested to see what that number is now per human being.
They haven't released anything newer than like 2018, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we have a situation now where people are spinning up more accounts to try and chase the inflation, notably of Plex, which obviously the types of PvE that people are largely multi-boxing are types that are faucets for ISK, thereby exacerbating the inflation and the depleting the amount of Plex on the market. I mean, we can look at the idea of, as Plex price goes up, more people will be incentivized to buy Plex to sell it in the game. But nonetheless, that's not balancing the inflation right now.
I think it's a bit complicated than that, because what actually drives Plex is I would classify as high income multi-boxable, because the thing about for example Ishtars, right, is that until recently Ishtars haven't been changed since like nullsec ratting hasn't really been changed since the DBM reversal, and like you make like 60 mil just AFK Ishtar spinning, and the consequence of that is actually that the number of hours you need to Ishtar rat to Plex is like something ridiculous, like over 35 hours or something like that. And what I think actually is driving the Plex price is multi-boxable high income activities. And in this bracket, you have, I think, 3 main culprits, which is Potron, wormholes, and homefronts. Potron and wormhole are high income. Homefront is safe, like, because homefronts are generally bots. So homefronts run for multiple hundreds of hours in the highest deck, and nobody gives a shit. And it's really that sort of activity actually squeezing out Ishtar ratters, because as Plex goes up, Ishtars don't actually scale that well because you need a ridiculous amount of hours to actually Plex that Ishtar account. The marginal ISK you get on an additional Radar is actually not that high.
So just to clarify, with those three that you mentioned, Pochvan, Wormholes, and Homefronts, would I be how much is Wormhole income? How much of that is Faucet? It's not a huge amount at all, right?
It's all of it is Faucet.
It's all because of the blue loot.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
That's not strictly speaking true, because the salvage and exploration stuff and the minerals are also a big source of the wealth there.
I mean,
it is a big proponent of it, but it's not pure Faucet.
Yeah.
Unlike Homefronts and Pochvan, which is
So with Homefront, what I've never run a Homefront site. What is the primary income method there? Does it just generate ISK?
Yeah, you just get a payout, just like Pochvan.
Okay. So
you also missed out, which is becoming more and more popular, and then it was very not popular when they changed the sites in nullsec, but has now come back when they fixed it. Is Thunderchild ratting is primarily pure Faucet. There's a little bit of salvage in there, but generally they don't even do that. They'll just give it to someone else. That is being massively exacerbated by the fact that they buffed those sites' payout to offset.
That was completely unnecessary, as we'll see a bit later.
I think it was necessary as a quick fix to keep people happy, and then they should have immediately reverted it on the patch where they got rid of the issue that people were angry about. But then they didn't do that. They said they're going to review it, which is almost code for we're going to forget about it until we're reminded, until it's, beaten over our head a billion times.
I think we should see now.
Yeah.
Angry, you said later.
I tell you what,
Luke, see now.
Luke and Drake, you can tell us that, you're strongly on this, right? About you gave these people a makeup present for the nerf, and then you unnerfed it. You're on that, right? You're going to make sure that gets sorted.
I've been pushing forward the fact that it needs to be reverted whenever I have the chance with CCP. It also rubs me the wrong way because I've willingly reduced Pochvan's Faucet with the Pochvan changes, even though hopefully down the line we're going to get the buffs to the smaller sites. But we essentially have halved Pochvan's Faucet, and then in the same breath, the increase to the sites in nullsec printed an extra nearly 21 trillion, and it's set to be more than what Pochvan has ever printed in a month as an extra on this.
And unlike what's his face, Mark Resurrectus, who cut Wormholes by a third and then avoided retribution from his community by getting hired. You don't even have that option.
Well, because it's actually smart, because now you have to go to FanFest, which gets CSP extra money to confront him, and then you'll realize that Mark is at least 4 times the height of you, and he will just pick you up like a chew toy and just carry you around.
He gave me a hug at the Eve London meet just a few months ago, and I think I had to push one of my eyeballs back in.
Yep. And Hirebrand in chat.
That's when he's being affectionate.
Hirebrand mentions in chat, don't forget about marking tax reductions, which was a major loss sink, which is correct. They halved market tax transactions.
You'll see that in the slide.
Okay, cool. But
All right,
it might be a good time
hear
for
about
us
your
to
slides. Yes, let's go.
Start bringing that up.
Which slide do you want me to start in? Because I'm ready to talk about the economics of this all.
So just do slide 3, the one with the bar graph.
This is my favorite one of the 3, so please continue.
That's just stacking sinks and faucets on top of each other. Sinks are positive y-axis, other way around. Faucets are positive y-axis, sinks are negative y-axis, and the color bands showing what category the sinks are. So since the sort of double whammy of them buffing the nullsec rats and nerfing the sales taxes, the average monthly net ISK is up about 10, 20 trillion ISK. And that's really sort of what really matters in the long run about inflation, which is everyone has more ISK in their wallet chasing, actually, because of the mining changes, a much smaller amount of goods, which ultimately is just what drives inflation. You know, you have cost push in terms of more money chasing goods, and you have a shrinking supply because Equinox is well designed and has no problems with it.
So wouldn't we be seeing that sameness here on the money supply? Because I was
It's not
actually
just Equinox, right?
I was actually interested to see that this is like the first time where it's actually just been flat, where the money supply hasn't actually changed all that much. It hasn't increased or decreased.
So the thing about that is that this graph is driven a lot. This is the active money supply. This is driven a lot by people going active or inactive. So when people go inactive because they don't like the game, the money supply shrinks, even if the ISK per capita, which is what drives purchasing power, is going up.
So when we see it
you're saying that money is out of the economy, but it's not gone. It's just out of the economy when someone's no longer playing.
Yeah.
So then,
you can track that on the active ISK delta chart, which has been negative all this time, which is showing that people are going inactive with trillions of ISK in their wallet.
Is it the ISK velocity chart? That's the one I usually look at.
The active ISK delta. You see it on the sinks and faucets chart, the one that has blue bars and red bars horizontal.
What I've seen as an explanation for the recent increase in like people going inactive is just people subscribing for the Goon move, and then their accounts like lapsing again now that they're moved.
That's too recent. CCP counts 90 days, and we haven't moved for 90 days.
All right.
We've got a question. Dr. Spodumane hasn't been paying attention, but he says, why haven't miners scaled up to counter rising mineral prices?
Because the sites don't spawn. That's why. You can scale up as much as you want, but if there's no ore, you're not mining anything.
I've also seen some people responding to that question, people asking that same question on Reddit, responding to that question saying, there are sites in low-sec, but people saying that don't really quite understand what trying to do mining in low-sec is actually like. It's not possible in the same manner as it is in some places in nullsec.
Isn't mining generally just like a shit activity in the video game? Like overall?
What, as in boring?
Yes.
I mean, that's a gameplay question rather than an economic question, isn't it?
I mean,
mining, it depends how you're doing it, right? Like a lot of corps will go and do mining ops together, and then it's a social thing you're doing as a corp, right? I think Angry's point is probably more accurate, which is the sites need to exist, and there's not enough sites to combat the problem, right? And low sec is, if you're in null sec, you're in null sec because you want to be in null sec, and one, mining in low sec is very different, and two, you may not even think about mining in low sec because you've got all your gear in null, right? So
it's easier to day trip into a wormhole than it is to go to low sec and mine.
So connect some dots for me.
I realized my mic's been off, sorry.
That's crazy. How long have you been talking without... No,
Like
never
5
mind.
minutes.
That's insane. So I wanna kind of connect the dots because the mineral price index is like a hot buzzword that people say when they talk about the MER. And I would like to know like where this ties in. Like you're talking about the sites not spawning. Does that make the mineral price index rise? What does this mean for the economy overall?
Them not spawning so people can't mine it means the demand is the same and the supply is lower, so prices spike. There's also other things. Mining has gone up. If you look at the asteroid ore volume mined over time, since November it has gone up compared to October and September. But at the same time, you also have, after the Goon move, the production value, especially in December, has almost doubled for goons.
Something like that.
Yeah. So the supply has gone up, but the demand has absolutely skyrocketed as well. CCP has intervened on the isogen part, so you don't need as much isogen for most production now, or most large production. That has helped, but isogen is still one of the more lucrative ores. Besnazine is the second most lucrative ore to mine at the moment, which is why we're seeing more people come to Poshman. It's been overtaken by Macoxit, which is where you get morphite from, which is exceedingly rare in nullsec now, which is where the bulk of the supply came from before, and now it's essentially almost non-existent.
So what I've seen a lot on the trading discords is that people are mass buying up basically any super they can find right now. Is that also part of like the rising prices of minerals? Are supers and titans and all that sort of stuff? Like, are they largely?
Yeah, they're largely minerals. They're hedging their bets against minerals getting even more expensive, and supers and titans getting even more unaffordable in the future.
Yeah, but buying supers and titans on speculation doesn't have any effect on the supply and demand of the minerals themselves because they're already produced. Putting in orders early will, and also the speculation buying on morphite. There's been a big increase in morphite buying, especially I think a month and a half ago when Oz does his weekly report. He pointed out that morphite is likely going to be on the rise, and I think he pointed out Mexilon as well, which has almost tripled in price in the last year. So people have been buying that. Is it a huge demand compared to the rest of it? Probably not, but it exacerbates the problem. The main issue is the fact that the supply after Equinox is just very, very low.
I think the other part though is like even if people are mining, how many groups are exporting those materials, right? Versus going, actually we're going to stockpile it because we can see a shortage and we want it for our people, let's say, so we're just going to stockpile it all.
Exactly, especially if you want to do production in nullsec as well, you're going to want to sell it to your fellow person, your fellow alliance member or coalition member. So it's not.
As in, you want to invest it into the local economy.
Yeah, exactly.
To bolster everybody in that area specifically.
Yeah, so the Jita prices aren't necessarily going to be affected at all by that supply because it's not getting to the Jita supply at all. Some will, but not all of it.
Aside from the fact that you want to bolster the local area, aren't minerals also pretty much a pain in the ass to move in relatively large quantities?
With ore compression, no. But if you can't
not
compress the
really.
ore.
The only mineral that's kind of hard to move is pyrite, and you move that by moving compressed moongu.
But we're not seeing the things like we used to see with people building 425mm railguns and Megatrons and stuff like that. That's not a thing
an
anymore.
older code, Gra, but it still checks out.
I'm pretty sure that happened before compression, and also compression is so easily available now because of porpoises and orcas. Getting compression is not just a Rorqual thing, and it's
that's got to be that's got to be over a decade old.
I'm just a lonely, just a lonely low sync denizen. I don't care much about. Well, not care, but like I just don't have a lot of touch with industry.
So, has anybody here who here has been playing during that time of people building 425mm railguns as a way of moving ore?
Well, I've already betrayed myself. So.
I think it's just me and Gra then. Back in the times of 100% reprocessing.
There were
when
two
the
more
dinosaurs
slides,
were still alive.
Were we finished with this one? Was there more you wanted to say about this, Angry? I wanted to make sure you got through all your slides. You told us what you wanted to know. Us to know.
The other one is sort of a peculiarity. It's nothing major, but when CCP talks about inflation, they often use the CPI, and I'm just telling people that the CPI that CCP is using is shit because it includes injectors, which have nothing to do with player activity, really, because injectors come from Plex, and and if you look at how they weigh things, injectors, CCP weighs injectors at 20. Oh, sorry. The correct way to phrase it as injectors make up 20% of CCP CPI. So whenever they do a injector sale, the CPI goes down, even though like nothing happened with the game economy. And I'm guessing for like 90% of, maybe not that high, but for like a certain segment of the population, they just don't use injectors because injectors are a luxury, and it's only really a factor for very rich players, you know.
Who shouldn't
Huh.
be
So I'm,
catered to by the full design of the game.
Guess I never knew that. Okay. And so where could I see this on any of these other graphs? I can kind of see it on this one, right?
you go to the CPI breakdown, you'll see accessories at the very top, and that's sort of where you'll see the impact is. It causes the CPI to not move as much as it should because Plex is actually a lot more stable than a lot of other things.
Which is a bit of a bad thing to say in and of itself. Plex is the more stable, and it's done 20% this year.
Well, in theory, Plex is more securely anchored to people's time than ISK is. Don't tell me that doesn't make sense. I think you know what I mean.
In a vacuum, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's also CCP has been doing a lot of sales, and every time they do a Plex sale, they almost immediately follow it by a sale like on the NES that immediately scoops up all that Plex. So a lot of the Plex that's being purchased in those sales is not really ever going to the market. A good chunk of it will, but the majority of it won't, because it then goes straight into a sale like a skill injector sale, skill extractor sale, or the big one was it Black Friday when they had the you could get 2 years of Omega for like ridiculously low price. I think it equated to like $4 each or something stupidly low.
$4 per month,
something like that. Yeah,
I think it was like $650 a month if you bought like the $650 Plex and then bought the 2-year with that Plex.
So
like
it's
good for CCP's accounting, right? Because the thing about Plex, right, is it's deferred revenue until it's turned into game time.
Yeah.
And what CCP probably saw was that people bought Plex as a so-called inflation hedge. So it's all this dead Plex sitting on accounts that CCP cannot move from deferred revenue to recognized revenue. So now they do this thing by doing a Plex sale, then immediately have doing Omega sale to have people so they can recognize that revenue much sooner.
It also depends if they want to recognize the revenue. Just from an accounting perspective, if you want your managers to get a massive bonus, then you would do the NES sale to recognize it as revenue. If you wanted to fund something else, you need cash flow, you would do a Plex sale and try and keep as much of it in deferred revenue, because then you get tax on it.
Yeah, from what I can see, CCP does a trick where they only recognize like Plex that has been activated for any reason, right?
It's been consumed and removed from existence.
Plex that is in the markets and like actually physically exists in the game is deferred revenue, and also your monthly sub, which if you've paid for it in dollars, the months that don't apply to the year in question is also deferred revenue.
Oh, I see. I had no idea.
It's just standard accounting. It's so you compartmentalize in the correct period, and you only pay tax on the actual revenue in that period. So if I bought 5 years of sub time on my accounts, CCP won't get tax on it all in the first year. They will split that out equally over the year.
Is that? I never quite got the answer to this question from a public source. Is that definitive though? Because there are accounting standards that don't do that.
The accounting standards in Iceland allow for it. I see no reason why they wouldn't do it, because it is literally just free cash flow for them in the form of not paying tax earlier. They can, if they want to pay tax earlier, they can do that. If they, for example, if they wanted to do it to pump up their numbers for a certain Korean company to buy them out, you could potentially do that.
It's a
I'm
weird
not
one.
saying
Like
they have. Yeah.
some companies choose to recognize it immediately and hold the liability and inflate their liability just because
Yeah.
it's good from a valuation perspective.
The standards, the reporting standards allow for it. The vast majority of companies will do that to pay the least amount of tax. It simply depends on the industry, the company, the leadership, the governance. But I would say I'm pretty confident that they would defer it.
I mean, I would assume they do. I mean, that's what I do with some of my accounting, because why would I want to pay tax when I'm still holding the liability? But
yeah. I have
some.
I have a kind of, I think this is a very, very basic, quite broad question that is going to be on a lot of people who are just trying to play the game's mind. Is there anything in the short term that you think CCP could do to arrest the inflation?
They could revert the buff to nullsec and replace it with something that isn't a faucet. I personally don't. But that's the one thing. But swap the faucet for a non-faucet.
I think we ought to put a key on your advice where we have to put like a key into the machine for you to actually give us your advice from here on out. Mr. Keys are cool for games. Thanks though. I'm sorry, that was mean. Anyways, I look at this graph that I've got on the stream. So the mineral price index, I know what that is. What is the secondary and primary producer price index? Like what do these numbers mean? And why is there such a big difference between all of these four numbers? There's a group down here and the mineral price way up there.
Let me actually grab that out of the spreadsheet. 1 sec.
Sure. Just does it have anything to do with
So
like income?
broadly speaking, the primary producer index and second producer index are industry goods. They're intermediates before finished goods. This matters to people who are industrialists. It doesn't matter if you don't do industry, other than the fact that if this index goes up, you pay more. And very importantly, so this is stuff like Moongoo, PI, like those pirate net resonator things, and so forth.
Okay.
Everything except minerals, which gets its own subcategory.
Okay, so let me just make sure that I've got it. So these three numbers down here are pretty much the cost of goods, like intermediate stuff, not minerals. What comes after minerals?
Yeah. Well, no. It's a different source. Moongoo is not minerals. So if you see, so the primary is the lowest level, and the next level is secondary, which is a level higher than that. So like, primary is Moongoo, and secondary is, let me check. So like, the parts you build out of Moongoo are in secondary, and things like, what else is in secondary?
But yeah, so it's stuff you build out of the minerals and Moongoo. Like, I get it.
Secondary is,
but as a generally,
the most of the secondary stuff is salvage from wormholes, and I think it's advanced capital.
Right,
but
components. The point that I'm trying to make though is that the cost of those things hasn't really gone up tremendously, but the cost to make them has. So there's like a big disparity between income.
No, because Moongoo hasn't really gone up. Because Metnox has flooded the Moongoo market.
All right.
Talking about that, I've heard that Metanoxes have had a pretty bad effect on like the lower end moons not being worth mining anymore for like lower end groups.
Yeah, R8 is worth less than R4 because R4 is minerals, which is valuable, and R8 is completely dominated by Metnoxes. Like a Metnox is, we were talking to CCP about this when they were pitching thing. I was like, a Metnox is basically 20 hours of miner time. So whenever you put down Metnox, that's the equivalent of a miner doing 20 hours of work, and then, if it's not worth the mine, it's not at a certain price point, they will undercut human miners, and that's already happened for R8 and some R16.
So this is actually pretty close to mine and Phantomite's heart, because we played together before in an era where we had moon miners, and moon miners were generally considered to be a good thing, because not only did they promote conflict, they also allowed, at some point, smaller groups to have some kind of income. And back then, I didn't feel like those had a particularly bad effect on any kind of other market. So what changed that these metanoxes do have a pretty bad effect on the markets?
What changed was CCP removed the existence of other things to mine. Like back in the day, you had old spot anomalies that had millions and millions of M3 in them. So like if there was you didn't have to mine moon goo, but you had to spend more time mining minerals. So even without moons to mine, miners had something to do to provide to the economy. And the thing about after metanoxes is that metanoxes replace their labor, but they have nothing to spend their labor on otherwise.
So the old moons, they only mined specific moon materials. So I'm talking like dysprosium, technetium, all of that cool stuff. That's not the fact anymore, right?
That when in sort of 2017, I believe, when they finally changed moon mining to an active process that you do with people in ships in space, they at the same time overhauled the type of materials that came out of the moon.
Okay.
It was just simply moon goo before, but it got a lot more complex after that.
Well, actually, metanoxes are still just moon goo. The difference is that before moons would just give you the R64. Now, they give you a blend. So R64 is also reprocessed into everything that's lower rarity. So if you have an R64, it actually also makes some 32, some 16, some 8. And same thing with 32s, also byproducting some. And the demand for R8 is so low that it can really be fulfilled by just sort of like byproducts from mining R64 and R32.
Do you think that simplifying what comes out of a metanox to be, closer or even, the same style as came out of moon mining poses might give CCP better levers to pull to, try and get some way to solving this disparity?
I think we actually did tell them that during the initial design of metanoxes, that was an option, but I can't tell you what they said.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's a hot topic for people who are polarized on different sides around metanox replacing a lot of what was previously human active mind. We've got Hirebrand in chat saying how much conflict do metanoxes actually cause, though, and
I don't think
that's going to take somebody who owns some of these in lowsec or nullsec or both to answer how it is now. But we certainly know that prior to 2017, those were fleet fight focal points, especially in lowsec.
I think one of the things that we have to realize at this point is that the game has evolved past the stage of where we used to be when moon mining's pauses were a thing. I think groups are just a lot more coalesced and friendly with each other, and that these are just going to be massive fights or just end up being like blobfests where one side doesn't show up because they can't win it at all. Like the idea that there's just one group that's going to be able to drop at most 20 dreads on it, like we used to have back then. It's just not a thing anymore. There's just a lot more ISK in the economy in total, and a lot more money to be had. And I think we're just way past that. I think the idea of metanoxes as a conflict driver, I think they do promote conflict to some degree still, but it's different from what we used to have.
I'd like to sort of clarify one thing that you said previously, Gra, which was you said that they provided income for smaller groups. I think I might argue that in the past they provided income for PvP focused groups rather than just saying smaller groups. It was essentially income from PvP rather than income from.
Well, I mean, your smaller groups are
active.
more PvP focused. Like that's usually how it is. Because if you want to be industry focused,
Sure.
you have to be big.
I just think it's more accurate to say that it's a PvP income.
Yeah.
We can check that right now, right? Because CCP added that breakdown. A Redline. Do you see the graph with the breakdown of regional moon mining by Metnox versus Athenor? It should be like bar graphs with green and orange.
I will look for it. But when I find it, what should I be looking for?
Just put it on screen because it'll show you which regions have Athenors and which regions have Metnoxes. And I think that really, and to Guar's point, is you'll see which regions are where the resources are harvested by Athenors, which is, people have to be relatively safe to do Athenor PvE, and which regions are Metnoxes, where either the people with the power to hold the moons, either can't be asked to mine it with Athenors, or even if they can hold the Athenor, even if they can hold the moons, it's still safer to do Metnoxes.
I can just say straight up right now that most of Losec is Metanoxus. I don't have the moon breakdown for any of the areas at all, but I don't see a lot of Athenors anymore, but I see a lot of Metanoxus these days. And I think that's also just part of Losec just not being a very friendly environment to mine in.
In terms of the 100...
I was going to say that I know that before Metanox, PvP groups in Losec that were capable of taking and holding moons with Athenors
I think the next
struggled. That they struggled to find people to do the mining
Not really,
of the very
no.
nature of Losec.
There were groups within Snuff and Big App that mined a lot with workwalls, but they were also just large enough to not be bothered, if at all.
They didn't have anywhere near enough people willing to mine enough to cover all of the moons that they held.
No,
look at that.
I mean,
in
that's
Wicked
just a
Creek
natural
and-
limiter, right?
Wicked Creek, Outer Ring, Scalding Pass, almost all the mining there is done with Metanox.
And pretty much all wormhole space is Metanox as well.
Is there a lot of moon mining going on in wormhole space?
It's as a material value, it's not a lot, but the majority of stuff in there, like wormhole class 6, is essentially 0. It's behind Podfin, which is quite funny, just because it's probably not worth doing at all. And then in terms of places that are almost entirely Metanox, you've got the Bleak Lands, you've got Corazor, Curse. Wicked Creek is actually 100%. It looks like 100% Metanox. Black Rise, Outer Ring, and Scalding Pass are almost 100%. And then the largest one in terms of value for just Metanox is Syndicate, which looks like it's just over $500 billion value in December by Metanox. And then Fountain slightly behind it.
$500 is really not that much looking at like the total ISK income of, well, basically every region, right? Like all the faucets.
That is after. Well, the faucets don't matter. Yeah, the faucets are irrelevant because these materials get produced into something that is more valuable, and these materials have also crashed in price since Metanox because.
And this isn't an ISK faucet anyway. This consumes some of the. Well, it doesn't consume any of the ISK faucet. It just moves money around.
No, it consumes some of the ISK faucet because producing them, the production that it's used in has ISK sinks.
Notable ISK sinks?
Not as notable as it should be.
Okay.
that was changed recently as well, right? Well, not very recently, but like the cost to build things, the cost to invent things, those were changed like not too long ago, right?
I think that was like 2 years ago because that's when I was.
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it was a fairly big bump, and then the tax reduction was to like offset that, if I remember correctly.
I think the tax reduction was they did an event, didn't they? And then later on they made part of it permanent. I think that was an attempt to get, because that was when the ISK velocity was just going down and down and down. So that was probably an attempt to get the ISK velocity up.
They reverted the tax thing completely because as it turns out, like if you add 4 trillion in sinks from the from industry and then remove 18 trillion in sinks from taxes, it doesn't balance out in the long term. But
insane.
That was something CP did the last time they dropped transfer taxes, but they're not doing it this time for some reason.
I also want them to look at public contracts, not private contracts, because it's kind of stupid that the largest value items that people buy are always going to be on contracts because they're not subject to market taxes. They do have a small tax and a small broker's fee, but that's
irrelevant though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's passed either 1 billion or 10 billion ISK. The fee stops; it just gets capped. So that the Python that Gra and I bought, we would have paid 10,000 ISK tax on, which is a joke, but that's private, and people don't want private tax being touched because that's how you give stuff to alts and stuff. So that's kind of understandable. But public contracts, I think the broker's fee should go down, and then the actual sales fee should go up, or just be uncapped. I don't know if that's going to have this. It probably won't have the same effect as reverting the tax on market transactions, but it is something that also needs to happen, I feel.
That's tricky though, because at a certain level, people will just go on trading discourse and use direct contracts to dodge the
I mean, they're already doing that.
They're already doing that. So, but like the fees are only gatherable if they are worth their convenience, so to speak. The market is very convenient. Contracts are less convenient. You cannot justify a higher fee for them. Once the NDA goes down, there's fun stories to tell about that.
It's already like all caps basically get sold via contracts, as far as I know.
So what we're hearing is join us in 4 years on Untethered for Angry Mustache's NDA talk.
We will have a special episode.
It's 7 years, right? The NDA?
5.
5,
yeah.
okay.
We will be having a special episode for the Angry Mustache episode where he reveals everything that would have been better if they had listened to him.
You were making some lengthy promises there.
Well, that's the point, Phantomite. You were on CSM. Can we have that same thing with you?
I mean, I can run it past you because you're under NDA.
It's going to be a long conversation around antiplexes and projection, and I feel like he's already done that repeatedly. Just
surprise!
I don't think
surprise. I'll tell you what, Drake. You can tell.
No, because what you've told me is under NDA, so I can't repeat it.
Okay. Well, what I can say is that in 2020, Ansible was not on my radar as one of my points that I wanted to push. Unbelievable as that may be, there was a time, and it was my CSM term, where that was not my priority. That's up to you guys now.
You see in the chat, we have to find CSM members from 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, that's actually a really good idea. If we can find some CSM members who have gone 5 years past.
Don't you only have 1 year left?
Yeah, something like that. Something like only a year left.
But Panama is a goody two shoes. He won't share things.
He'll just keep signing. He'll just sign another NDA.
I'll just do it, sign an NDA for fun, so I don't have to.
Yeah, you'll just send them one yourself. Be like,
you
didn't send me a new NDA, so I took the pleasure of signing this for myself.
So we can do yours, but you're right. I will get to do mine first. That said, it's been very good to break this down and dispel some myths, but I'm also really pleased to hear that Angry, you know some of the things that they can change. I'm pleased to hear that current members of the CSM in channel are on board with repeatedly pushing this information to CCP, because this is a huge problem, and every day that it grows, it looks like it would be harder and harder to solve and come back from. So I thank you for that. Please fix it. But
it is essentially a scenario like we've been trying to frame it to CCP, or at least I have. Say like, look, this is only benefiting the really rich people who have scaled income, like multi-boxing and industry and market, things like that. And those are the people that are also paying the least amount of tax, kind of mirroring real life without getting into politics. On the flip side, most of the player base are not rich, and these are in varying degrees fucking them over.
And chilling their content, chilling their action. Exactly, and eventually the bottom's going to fall out, and they're going to leave, and the player base is going to drop. Pissing off the rich people is going to reduce the player base less than really pissing off the majority of people that are very vulnerable to inflationary pressures.
Isn't it true that anything you do that would benefit somebody who isn't rich would also invariably benefit somebody who is very rich?
I think that's a bit of an oversimplification. That's also giga cope told by people who aren't rich but think they will be in the future. Oh, because you mean Americans?
Ooh.
There must be a lot of Americans where I live in England then, because they're the fucking same.
Excuse me, can I have
they're not
everyone
Americans.
raise your hand if you're an American, please? Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm the only one with my hand raised. Whew.
Someone in comment has said we can eat the space rich.
Legendary.
I think Gra shouldn't be eaten because he has just kindly donated 1.5 trillion ISK to Minotaur Fleet.
No, the fact that he had it available to donate means that he does need to be eaten.
It's trickle-down economics in action.
Yeah, it's trickle down.
Tell you what.
It trickled down. Hold on, Phantomite. Do you know where it's trickled down from?
Somebody's butt crack, it seems.
Well, it trickled to Gra first, of course.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, that's probably a story for another day.
It is, because this day is quickly coming to a close.
Yes, I will come to people for their final comments of the show today. Drake, do you mind if we start with you? Anything you want to sign off with? I would just say.
Hold on. Let me use this key first. Okay, now go.
I would say, despite this blip on Poshfrin's fruitful improvements over the next, hopefully, multiple years, we'll hopefully see about that. I think people should become Poshfrin and try out the changes, and the more feedback that I get, the better, as long as it's well-reasoned, detailed feedback. Please stop sending me gifs of elephants shitting. People who are doing it know who they are. But that is literally if it's a good patch, they send it. If it's a bad patch, they send it twice.
You can move on to the rhinoceroses now.
The rhinoceroses are in there as well. Oh, okay. But yeah, the more feedback, the better, because it gets sent to CCP, and I want Poshfin to be in the most healthy spot it is. If this patch isn't that, then hopefully I can reason that it needs to be changed for something else, because the end result isn't we're changing it for the sake of it. It is to make Poshfin as healthy as possible going forward. And yeah. Angry Moustache, is there any sort of final reassurance you can give us that things could be okay in the future?
So I would say that the changes that CCP could do to make inflation lower and make things cheaper are actually very easy to do. The prisoners, if they want to do it, that's it. Like these are all so-called database changes where you change a number in the database and it would affect this thing, but it is a question of direction. It could very well be that CCP thinks this is a good direction to be heading in, or I don't know what goes on there anymore. It could very much be the case that they think this is the right way. It's up to the community to convince them otherwise.
Thank you. And LB, you've always been a voice to counter Redline's extremist views and my opposite extremist views. Do you think that this is going to be a happier place for all of us?
Well, I think anybody that's referring to a 30 million key as a barrier to do something whilst living in the richest region of the game is probably a false flag. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, talk about mountains out of molehills. That's all I have to say.
Gra, do you have any tips for people who want to be able to afford a 1.3 trillion ISK ship?
No, not really.
I'm going to keep that to himself.
I think that's the tip. Right?
Don't bother.
Yeah,
don't bother.
Feed it
And
properly. I think that's the tip.
I say don't bother with it. And if you do ever get to that point, if it happens to you, try not to make a big deal out of it.
I do have one last point for Guar, which is unblock me on Reddit. That way I don't make a MER thread.
So I have a bit of a problem with that. I would definitely like to do that, except I've blocked so many people that the blocking console for me on Reddit doesn't work anymore. So
That's what
I
they
can't.
all say.
I can't actually do it. But yeah, next time I post the MER or any kind of patch notes, I'll do it on one of my alt accounts. I just have one alt account. I don't have more.
I remember that. I was the fucking intermediary between both of you. That was so funny.
Like a hostage negotiator.
Look, I don't have a lot of patience with people on Reddit anymore. So I just snip the people out that I don't like or think I don't like.
Luke, as your final thing, who do you hate and why do you have them blocked?
I actually don't think I've got anyone blocked. I don't think I've got anyone blocked at all. I mean, I've got a couple of things. Continue to send Drake photos of elephant shit. That's fine. It'll be interesting to see in a couple of weeks what mood Drake is in, because the CSM summit is the week after next. So most of the CSM will probably be traveling when next week's show is going on, or recovering from traveling. So it'll be interesting to see what Drake's chipper mood is like on the 2nd.
I mean, it's only 5
everybody
days.
take a screenshot now. Take a screenshot of Drake's face now so we can compare it.
It's only 5 days of non-stop meetings with many, many different devs.
God, that sounds like work.
And also the weather there is pretty horrendous at the moment, apparently.
Redline, I'm gonna give you the final close off today, but I think as my close off, I might say that if anybody here is desperately looking for some form of trickle down in these hard economic times, if you join my alliance, then Gra has, over the course of the many months he's been here, donated 40 Execa and AV issues to the alliance for handout.
The requirements are you've got to be over 38% ISK efficiency.
Why do you have to name a number? You could have just said like many or something. Like
because that's above their average ISK efficiency at the moment.
No, I'm talking to fan of mine. Why say 40? Because it wasn't 40. It was 25. But I also donated other things.
Oh, take it away, Redline. What have you got for us for the end of the show?
Oh, listen, I'll tell you what. There are a lot of things that could have been done to make it, I don't want to say not possible, but less lucrative to use 60 people to run Poshvin fleets. Aside from keys, I don't think that just because someone is rich means that they should have to spend all of their money on stupid shit. And I hope that in the future, CCP does more scaling changes. Instead of just changing numbers in a database, maybe make them changed based on other numbers in a database. It's 2025 now. We can do real game design. We really can. And on that note, there's a person named the Mad Rambo that we're gonna raid. He's warping through space right now. I think he's doing a giveaway too. So make sure you join his giveaway when we get there. And we'll see you all next week. I'm going to send you there now. I've been Redline. This has been Untethered, and we'll see you next time.